In this video, I'm going to be loading data from a Major League Baseball data site called retrosheet.org, and I'm going to be taking a look at game data from 1960 on forward, and I'm also going to be taking a look at some team abbreviations and the people that are players and coaches. So I have a series of files that are going to be loaded into my R environment. First is the team name information. I'm going to be loading that file into a data frame. And same for the bio information. So this is information about players and coaches. And then I'm going to be loading game data. So there's one file for each season that I'm going to be pulling, again, from 1960 on forward. And I'm going to be loading that into a data frame as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my working directory called MLB Analytics. So I hit that. There we go. It's my working directory set. So now next I need to load my my libraries. I'm going to be using Plier and Tidyverse. Now if I have not already installed these libraries, what I need to do is I need to install .packages and then with the package name. So since I already installed them already, I don't need to install them. But this is the command that I would do to install the Plier package. And then I could do the same thing for my Tidyverse package. Since they're already installed, I am going to bypass that step and go ahead and just load the library into my environment. And I'm also going to load the Tidyverse library. All right. Next, I'm going to be looking at my team data. So there's a team abbreviations file out there that I can see over here in my directory. This is my working directory. If I click on, this is going to be in my data subdirectory. If I click on that, I'm going to see my team abbreviation.txt file. So that's the file I'm going to load into a data frame. So as you can see, the headers are set to false. So that means I don't have headers in my data frame or in my data file. So I'm going to name them myself. So first I'm going to run this line to take that defined file and read it as a TXT file or a comma delimited text file and read that into a data frame. So I'm going to Control Enter, and as I see here, I have my first data frame, and that's my team's data frame. I have 152 records, and there's 6 variables. Now, if I want to take a look at that, I can type view and then the name of the data frame, view teams, and then the team's data frame opens up. And as you can see, I do not have column headings, so I want to define those. I'm just going to close this. And that's what I'm doing on my next line in my R script. I'm going to define the column names for the team's data frame. And they are going to be code, league, location, team, first year, last year. If I Control Enter to run that. And now if I take a look at my team's data frame, you can see now I have column headers, so I know what each of these data are. So I've got the code, league, location, team name, first year, and the final year of the team. So the team's information is all loaded. Now I'm going to do something similar for my people. So this is going to be all the coaches and the players. I do have headers. That data file has headers on it already. So the first row in the data file are the headers for the data. So I don't need to define them myself. All I have to do is simply take that bio file that I see right here. I'm going to load that into a data frame called people. And now if I take a look at that data frame, it's going to open up. Now this is a larger data frame. This has 21,000 rows, almost 22,000 rows, and it already had the column names, and I can see those here. So this is my people data frame. All right, so next I'm going to load the actual game logs. Now, as I mentioned, there's one game log for every season, and I place them into a separate subdirectory called game logs. So what I see here is from 1960 onward, I have one data file for each season. So rather than having to load each of these files individually, what I can do is I can tell R to take a look at that directory, and anything that ends with a .txt I want to include that in loading into a data frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a list of file names, and it's going to look into that log, to this log directory that I've identified as data/game log. So it's going to go to that game logs directory, and it's storing that as this variable. And I'm going to look for anything that ends with .txt, and I'm going to put that into a variable called log files. So first, I'm going to create a variable called log directory, and that's going to be the directory where my data files are at. Now I'm going to look into that directory and find all of the .txt files, and I'm going to place that list into a variable called log files. And there I can see I have 63 log files, and this is a list of each of the log file names with the path. So now with that list, what I'm going to do is I'm going to load all those log files, all 63 of those log files. I'm going to load them one after another into a data frame that I'm calling game log. So when I run that line, and you can see I have this progress bar that I have set here. I want the progress to show at the bottom, so it's telling me how far along the process I'm at, just so it doesn't look like R might be sleeping. I can see that it is actually working. So that progress equals text throws that across the bottom so that I can see the progress that I'm making. And this is a special load command that I'm using to be able to load a set of files and also to show the progress. But now those are loaded into a data frame called game log, and I have 132,000 rows into that game log. That means I have 132,000 games that I'm including in my data set. Additionally, for each season, for each game, there's 161 variables describing that game. So I have a lot of different variables that I can work with this data set. So this is a very, very robust data set that I'll be working with. All right, so what I'm going to see though is I don't have column names on that data frame. So what I want to do is I want to create my own column names. So this was a little tedious. What I'm doing is in the order in which they are in my data frame, I'm renaming or naming all of the columns. So that's what you see here. This is 161 column names that I have here as part of this call names command. And you can see all those are listed. So now when I run this command, it's going to set the column names for all the columns in that game log data frame. So let's take a look at that data frame so we can see what the data looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And there we can see across the top, those are the column names that I described. And I can see I've got the game code, the date of the game day, the visiting team, the home team, and a lot of different attributes. But if I scroll across here, it only shows me 50 attributes at a time. So these are columns 1 through 50. Now I can go to the next 50 by clicking on this button. And now I can see columns 51 through 100. Now if I want to get to the end, I can click on the double arrow, and that moves me all the way down to the end of the data frame, or the end of the columns, and this is where I can see the columns end. So all 161 columns are loaded into that data frame. All right, so what I want to do now, so I've got the data loaded into the game log, the people, and the teams data frames. But what I want to do is I want to be able to make some changes to that game log data frame. I want to be able to add a column that's going to identify which year that game took place in. So if I take a look at the game log, if I take a look at that game date, the game date is kind of a coded field. It has the 4-digit year, the 2-digit month, and then the 2-digit day. To be able to pull that out or to be able to do something with that requires some manipulation. So rather than having to kind of fuss with that field anytime I want to look for certain years of data, I'm going to have R take this game date and take the first 4 characters, the year field, and create a field out of that. So the year data from the game date, I'm going to create a field for that. And that's what I'm doing right here. So I'm going to create one additional variable or column in my game log data frame. I'm going to add a column called game year, and that's going to be the first 4 characters of my game date. Additionally, I'm going to add one more column. That's going to be called game month, and that's going to be characters 5 and 6 from that game date field. And that's going to take that data and move it to, or copy it and put it into the game month column. So I'm going to run this first command to create the game year, and now I have 162 variables, so it added a column. I'm going to hit the next command to add the game month, and now I have 163 variables. So you can see that it added columns. So let's take a look at that. But what it does is it adds the columns to the very end of the data frame. So I'm going to click on the double right arrow and then scroll to the right, and I can see the game year and the game month have been added to that data frame. All right, so next, what I want to do is I want to add another column that's going to identify the home or the visited team that won. So it's going to create a new field or a new column called winner, and it's going to identify was the home team or the visiting team that won. So if we hit enter here, and then it's going to go ahead and grab the team name as well. So now we have 2 more variables. We're up to 165 variables. Let's take a look at that game log and go to the very end. Scroll over here, and there we go. We have the indicating if it was the home team or the visiting team that won, and then the team name that was the winner, and that is captured from earlier on. We can see the home team, and then taking a look at the the visitor score and the home score based on who had the higher score. That's who we determined who won, and that's what we were doing right here. All right, so now we have all the columns that we want. So next what I want to do is I need to do some conversion. So that game date, I want to make sure that that's set as defined as a date data type. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to format that as well, and I'm going to then define that as a date field. And then finally the park ID, which is actually, it looks like it could be, I want to make sure that that gets interpreted as a character field. So I'm going to define that as well. All right, so kind of those are setting my variables to make sure that they are defined as the type of data type that I want. And now I have these variables that I created along the way. I'm just going to go ahead and remove those to kind of clean up my workspace. So remove the log directory variable and the log files variable as well. So all of those kind of temporary variables are cleaned up. I have my 3 data frames that contain the game data, the people data, and the teams data. And all of this data was from 3 separate sources. One source, the game log, was actually from 63 different files, and I'm loading up into one data frame. So this is the Major League Baseball game data that I have loaded up into my data frames. And the next step, I'm going to do some exploratory data analysis on that game data to see what it looks like and to see if I can find some research questions.